The views and opinions expressed on More Peace, Please are those of the host and her guest. The information presented is strictly for general information purposes only.
It was just like the start of just being like, all right, like you can't control the narrative. So like you got to just rock with whatever's happening in that present moment. So when I had Zara, I feel like she taught me even more about releasing control.
Welcome to More Peace, Please, because sometimes we just have to ask for more peace. Please. On this podcast, my guests and I will discuss different ways to access peace, while also acknowledging how difficult peace can be to obtain and maintain. I am your host, Dominique Davis, also known as Brown and Bindi, trauma-informed yoga teacher and practitioner, weekend musician, and content creator. Welcome to my little corner of the internet. We're all friends here, so kick off your shoes, relax your feet, and let's just see if we can ask for a little more peace. Please. Welcome back to this week's episode of More Peace, Please. I was listening to the first part of my conversation with Linda, and I realized that I have an opportunity to touch on something here in part two. Speaking about motherhood is such a privilege, and I realized that this podcast isn't specifically about motherhood overall. So I likely won't be talking about the subject again for a while. I didn't want to miss this opportunity to speak on spiritual motherhood. The women who act as metaphorical surrogates and volunteer to supplement the experiences of the people around them. I don't know if age is so much a determining factor of spiritual motherhood as much as one's maternal intention. There have been women in my life who are no more than 10 years older than me, who have shown up for me in ways that could only be described as motherly, with a patience, a selflessness, and a foresight that I only associate with the spirit of the matriarch. The concept of a matriarch has always been so interesting to me because their role is where spiritual motherhood becomes so important. Matriarchs are not just mothers and grandmothers, they're leaders. They carry the burdens of their own generation as well as the generations that come after and hold space to create vision for the family. Showing up to provide guidance, support, and knowledge to ensure that the manifestation of that vision comes into fruition. A lot of us do not have matriarchs within our own families. But what is so interesting is that we are often spiritually adopted by women outside of our own bloodline that have that matriarch spirit. It often takes a village of mothers, spiritual or maternal, to give a child an experience steeped in different styles of loving. As I continue this conversation with Linda, I invite you to send some energetic love to the spiritual mothers in your lives, whether that be a teacher, aunts, neighbors, church members, mentors, anyone who has aided you in your own maturation on this big blue marble. I also invite you to better understand what your role is in your own community and how you can better show up for those who may need love, support, and a little understanding. Okay, here is part two of Finding Peace in Motherhood with Linda Elaine. And
Right.
I don't want to be the last to know with
Mhm.
anything my children do. I don't want to be the last to know. And I think as a
Mhm.
parent, if you don't want to be the last to know, then it's really important because every family is going to be different. It's really
Right.
important for you to figure out for your family, how do we create that safe space where our children feel like they have room to mess up and to make mistakes without feeling like they are being shunned and pushed away and judged.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I agree with that. And I don't really know where that came from as well. I think that's an older generation concept just because
Mm,
maybe there was more structure at that point. I don't know. I feel like
yeah.
now the generations are just more fluid with everything. Like we're
Yeah.
fluid with love. We're fluid with what you want to be when you grow up. We're fluid with so
Yeah.
many things where before they weren't. It was like, okay, I'm the parent, you're the child. Versus now it's like, yeah, I'm
Yes.
still the parent and you're still the child, but like that doesn't take away from the fact that I want to know everything about you still. I don't want you to keep secrets from me. Like I'm here to like help you and guide you and support you. So like I'm your number one cheerleader. Like, what we doing today?
Yes. And also
So
with that structure, when you're like, I'm the parent and you're the child, that's implying that we have nothing to learn from these children, and nothing could be farther from the truth. There is
that
so
part.
much for us to learn from these children.
Yep.
Even last night, um, when AJ got off the bus, one of our neighbors gave him this little toy, and now like both of my children are obsessed with this toy. So I was talking
Hmm.
to Olivia, and I was like, well, actually, our neighbor gave that to AJ, Libby, so you got to let AJ play with it because it's his toy. And then AJ was like, well, actually, I told Libby that we could both have it because I wanted her to be able to play with it too. And I started crying because
Oh my
I was just like, you are so kind. Like, you did
God.
not have to do that. There's no,
Hmm.
like, they both have tons of toys. Like, there was no reason that you had to feel like you had to share this with your sister, but out of your own, or you could have like let her see it and then taken it back and lived your happy life. But you said from the very beginning, this is ours. I just got this, and now it is ours. And I think that we become so hardened the older we get, and that scarcity mindset gets in, that we forget about generosity.
Hmm.
So children can at times can be such examples of how to be generous. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think their emotional intelligence is actually
Mm.
higher than some adults.
No,
Like
yeah, no
they
doubt, no doubt
they're
about it.
definitely more in tune with that, and it's very wild to see it because they're just these little beings who just entered the world, and you're like, wow, like you're just so compassionate and just so loving and like, like why can't everybody be like this? So yes, they definitely teach you so much, and it's fascinating to see. Like it really is. As a parent, it really is.
When we think about why can't people be like that, because I do think that a lot. I do think that
Hmm.
a lot. Why can't people soften? Because that's what children are. They have soft hearts.
Hmm.
And I know that it's life ultimately that hardens our hearts, but what will it take for us to step back and fully accept that it's not a suggestion? We got to soften our hearts. We have to be more childlike,
Hmm.
because with everything that has gone on, even just this year in our, just this year, starting with Cat Williams, everything that's gone on just this year in our culture, um, what is it going to take? What is it going to take for us to realize that having our eyes glued to screens,
Hmm.
it's not doing anything for the state of our hearts? If
Mm,
anything, it's hardening our hearts more.
for
What's it going
sure.
to take? Yeah, what's it going to take?
Girl, I think that would be a really deep spiritual conversation, but I do think what it
Yeah.
would take, like one of the, I guess, beginner friendly things is
Yeah.
what's happening in the homes, because I think I
Wow,
can't remember
Linda.
what the name of the book is. But he's my favorite author, and the fact that I cannot think of his name
Okay.
now. But he's the author of Four Agreements, and he has this other book. Oh my gosh, I have to text it to you after
I want
because
to say Don Manuel. I always end up calling him Lin Manuel. Don
yeah,
Manuel.
Don for sure. And Manuel, I think
Don
you're
for
right.
sure. Yes.
Yes. But I can't remember the book that I'm reading. But basically, in a nutshell, he was saying how parents should teach their children that they're perfect as they are. Because, we get
Mm,
in our society, it's like, I'm not perfect. So like da 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 da. But like he made a good
yeah.
point of like actually if we all came into this world and were taught that we're perfect beings, then we wouldn't have necessarily the insecurities that we start to gain as we go through the rest of, our lives. Girl, it was said so much better than
No,
how I'm
you
saying
just
it.
blessed me. No,
But
you just
it
blessed me. Yeah.
it made you think in a sense that like calling yourself imperfect all the time may not actually be the formula, so I
Mhm.
feel like obviously it's deeper than that, obviously, because we're not perfect if we're being mean to people or we're perfect by, doing bad things to people. But at the same time, he explained it so beautifully. And I think really where it starts is the home, because what's happening there dictates how that child is going to grow up and enter society and how they're going to treat others. So yeah, softening hearts starts in the home. I went on a tangent, but that's basically what I'm trying to
Absolutely.
say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, because I know you said deeper spiritual conversation than this 1 hour conversation can probably handle. But when it comes to that hardening of the heart, it's like, does that start when we start competing? Does our heart begin to harden? Does our heart begin to harden when we start to realize that people are different? And then and that happens young, you start noticing people are different pretty young, but then you start to create the hierarchy of what's better and what's worse. Is
Mhm.
that when the heart starts to harden? Because every time you start to see something as better or worse, and you see yourself in that worst category, that's a little hit.
Yeah,
That's a little hit. And God forbid your parents are affirming that you're
right,
not good enough, you know?
right. So then I think that applies again with Don. It's like if you believe that your life is perfect and you believe that you're
Yeah.
perfect, you don't need to compare yourself to the other little girl on the playground, because it's like, girl, I got a perfect life. Like, what am I looking to you and being like, I'm missing something, So I think there's a way of going about it. And I think me
Yeah.
reading it, obviously I haven't finished the book, so I have to understand the narrative a little bit deeper, but I can see how that is something that could potentially help in a sense. Because I just feel like words are spells, right? So when we're constantly
Mhm.
saying, I'm imperfect, I'm not
Mhm.
perfect, it's like you're feeding that narrative to your subconscious that you're not. Like that's almost saying like you're unworthy in a sense. But because society has made it so normalized that saying I'm imperfect, we believe that and we stand
Mm.
on that. But if I teach my daughter that like, hey, as long as you're trying to um progress and be a better person day to day, what
Yeah,
makes you imperfect? Like we all mess
exactly.
up, okay, but do I have to tell you that you're imperfect because of that? No, like you're still a perfect being in who you are because you're God's creation.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
I think that that narrative already sets us up for failure to want to compare our lives to other people, to want to compare our situations to other people and such. So, it's a good book. I didn't finish
Nice.
it, but I'm already like,
Text it to me. Text it to
I
me
got you.
when
I will text it to you.
we get off of here.
I
I
will.
think that I have to touch on the control aspect of that, because when it takes a lot of willpower, I
Mhm,
think, in our society, especially as Black women. We want the
mhm,
best for our kids. So I
mhm,
think it takes a lot of willpower to not try to control who they turn out to be. And when I
mhm,
say that, I hope that I'll speak for myself. I'll speak for myself. I think that subconsciously, through the things I say and through how I direct my children, I think that
mhm,
subconsciously I can try to influence how they're turning out
mhm,
versus just letting them be. And the reason I use the word subconscious is because it is never it's never fully obvious. It's not like do this, dress this way, blah 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 blah. But
mhm,
it's more through subconscious actions and things said that I'm realizing I'm trying to control who this person is turning out to be.
mhm,
And I believe that God has enough power to create the person he wants to create. I
mhm,
bought that person into the world. I'm here to keep that person safe and to feed them, but I do not have to create their personality.
mhm,
Even if you're more of a science based person versus a spiritual person, our environment, every bit of our environment creates our personality. So it's
mhm,
like, as parents, when we try to control that too much, and I want to be clear, I have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. I'm not writing any books on parenthood. Let me just put that out there right now. But I'm speaking about myself and my
mhm.
children.
Yeah.
When I try to control who they're going to be, I become very aware that if I try to control this, I'm gonna miss some of the fruit of what could have just naturally have been.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think having Zara has taught me to release control more,
Mhm.
because I did get to a point in my life where like I just let things flow. And my
Yeah.
sister calls me a hippie, and that's fine. But I just I wasn't always this way. I had a major car accident in my early
Mm.
20s. That kind of like shifted like everything. Like I was raised in a spiritual home, but I think that was
Was that
like
after school?
yeah, it was like right after I
Okay.
graduated college, I had started a full-time job, and
Mm.
I like hated the job so much, but
Yeah.
like, you just fresh out of college, you just trying to
Yeah.
just figure it
Yeah.
out.
What does
Um,
it mean to be an adult?
exactly, and it's like, oh,
What
you're
does it
paying me
mean?
this much, you go from minimum to this, and
Yeah.
but it was like I was working like all day. I want to say like the day started at like 7:30. Some days I got off at like 7:30. By the time I got home, it was like 8, so it was like 12-hour days
Yeah.
sometimes, and one day I was driving to work, and then like I was involved in this major car accident, and like I had just paid
Oh,
off my Corolla, and I got injured, and like the doctor was like, you can't work again. Like I'm shortening it completely, but all in all, the doctor was like, yeah, you can't work right now, so figure it out. And at the time, I was already on YouTube, because I told you I started in 2006, so I already had like a following there. Um, and that was kind of the start of me going full time with it, because it was like, okay, like, well, I still got bills, and this
yeah.
lady
Yeah.
just totaled my car, so I need a car. So yeah, it just propelled me to like put my energy into social media a lot more, because I had the time. And
Yeah.
it was just like the start of just being like, all right, like you can't control the narrative. So like you got to just rock with whatever's happening in that present moment. So when I had Zara, I feel like she taught me even more about releasing control, only because one, she was planned in a sense where in my 20s, I was like, I want to have my first kid at 30, but she wasn't planned when it actually
Yeah.
happened. So then it was like,
Yeah.
okay, relinquish control. Like this happened, and I didn't have the white picket fence that I thought I would have before I had the child
Yeah.
and all this stuff. But like this is what I asked for, and the universe gave it to me at the exact time. So all I could do is just trust the process. So control is just it's a robber of peace. That's what it is. It's a robber of your peace.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hope I didn't go on a
Wow.
tangent. But
Not at all.
yeah.
Not at all. That was perfect. That was perfect. Okay. What is a common misconception about motherhood that often steals our peace as mothers?
I think there's a lot.
Yeah, there are quite a few.
Yeah, I think when it comes to me, I'll just apply this to like my life, I guess. I think the snapback is one.
Oh my gosh.
Having it all figured out is the second. Being married is the
Mm,
third. And then I would say just not necessarily knowing what's next. Like, because
mm,
again, since I'm not a planner per se, I have ideas of what it is that I want to do or what I want to see. But overall, like, I tend to give God, like, okay, like, what are we doing? Like, what's
yeah.
next
Yeah.
chapter? What's the next road?
You
So,
tell
like,
me where to go.
yeah,
Yeah.
so literally sometimes I don't necessarily know. And people be like, well, like, what was your plan? It's like, I don't know. God hasn't told me yet. So I'm just going with the
Yeah.
process. And it sounds crazy, but like in most of the moments before the mess happens, God just
Mhm.
provides everything. So it's just like I'm not like stressed or like trying to figure stuff out, because I'm just going with whatever my intuition is telling me to do. But when moments
Yeah.
happen where it is the chaos or the mess, then it's like, oh crap, now it's time for a new level. I've been at this level for too
Mm,
long, and God is trying to shake me up now. Now it's time to go to the next. And obviously in the mess, it's not necessarily, oh, roses and butterflies. But I also know that in the mess, when I get out of this, I'm gonna look back and be like, oh, snap, I had to go through this to get to this. So
yeah.
I think for me, it's funny. I was actually looking at photos earlier from Zara's first time in Puerto Rico. And I look at that girl now, and I'm just like, I've come so far because postpartum was so ghetto for me. I suffered really bad postpartum depression, and I've never been depressed before. So like I at first didn't really know like what it was or why I was so sad,
Yeah.
but like still so
Yeah.
happy that I had my baby, you know? And I looked at a picture and I was just like, obviously way more heavier set. And I want to say Zara had to be at least maybe 5 months or something. And I'm just like, I look at that girl and it's like, now everybody's always like, oh my God, girl, how did you get to this size? You look so good.
Mhm.
And it's just like, I didn't even realize the like transition really. So when I look back at
Yeah.
early on when Zara was born, I'm just like, I don't even really recognize that person. But I know it's because most people didn't know mentally I wasn't really where I wanted to be. So I think people have this idea that we're just supposed to just have a baby, be happy, snap back, be married, be all of these things, but it's like that's not all of our narratives. So we're all just literally trying to figure it out in whatever form motherhood presents itself as.
Yes. Yes. Because we got to keep growing the population. But it
Right.
sounds like it sounds like a lot of the misconceptions have to do again with that control aspect,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I could speak about that snapback process quite a bit.
Mm.
And even looking back at pictures of myself right after I had either of my children, with AJ, I didn't really experience a lot of postpartum depression. I don't know if I ever talked to you about this, but I almost lost him when I had him. So
Yeah.
I think just him pulling through and bringing him home, I think that kind of offset the depression.
Yeah.
But with Olivia, it was bad. It was
Mm.
really, really, I was like, oh, this is what the girls be talking about. This is a lot.
Yeah.
And when I look back at pictures, it's like, it's hard to see the woman who just brought life into the world and say she's awesome when I equate those old pictures to where my mind was after I had that baby.
Mhm.
And with Olivia, that first year, there were times where I had to fight for my joy. I
Mhm.
think that my seeing YouTube for myself as a career, it was that journey stopped pretty abruptly. I wanted YouTube to be a career for such a long time. And then I had a video go viral at the beginning of 2021. And then I found out I was pregnant with Olivia in March. And
Mm.
I think a lot of the people watching this video, a lot of the people who like really ride hard for Brown and Bindi, like y'all remember, I was 7 months pregnant teaching yoga on here on Zoom.
Mhm.
So I was struggling with the idea of I finally have this success that I thought I wanted so badly, but I also have this beautiful baby girl. And I also can't control my emotions and figure out how to be happy because these hormones are kicking my butt. And
Mhm.
having two children is really hard.
Mhm.
So, all that to say is if I could go back and just take my face in my own hands and just look at myself in the eyes, I would just tell myself that none of it is in my control.
Yeah.
Just have the baby, make make YouTube videos when I feel like it, okay? Like cuz that's when the algorithm, we talked about the algorithm a little bit before we hopped on to this interview,
Yeah.
but that algorithm, that's really when like YouTube's algorithm started having a mind of its own, like 2021. So it's like
Yeah.
all of these different factors. It's like I wish I could just tell myself, baby girl, you can't control any of it. But there
Yeah.
is so much beauty here that if you let go of control, you'll have more space to see all the beauty. Gosh, I wish I could go back and tell myself that.
Mhm.
Mm,
No, I understand that completely. I look back at myself and I say the same. I think for me, I was kind of the direct opposite. I think when I got pregnant, um, once I was around like 4 months, 4 or 5 months
mhm,
pregnant, I like completely was like dwindling off of social media. Like, and I
mhm,
had been a full-time creator at that point for over a decade. Um,
mhm.
but I was just like, okay, like, let me just take this time for me. Like,
Yeah.
this is my first child, like, let me just, kind of enjoy this moment. But then my pregnancy got kind of complicated towards the second trimester, well, the end of the second trimester, and I started having seizures. And then I couldn't have a natural birth. So it was like all these things of like, oh my God, I thought it was going to be this way, and now it's this, and blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah.
yeah, yeah.
And then it was just like, okay, like I YouTube is the last thing on my mind. Instagram is
On
the
my
last
mind.
thing on my
Yeah,
mind. Like
yeah.
I'm over here just trying to make sure they don't take my baby out early. Like I'm over here trying to remember what my name is. Like so for me it was almost like I was forced in a sense to just create space for myself and just
Yeah.
let social media just be what it was. Like I look at my Instagram sometimes, I'm like, dang, like my last post was August and it's October now. And it's okay. It's not like I like beat myself up for it. Like, oh my God, you're not posting. But my best friend, she was like, honestly, God just clearly wanted you to rest, you know? Because I think,
Mhm.
especially as a Black woman, like we're always trying to like hustle and figure stuff out. And, you know, that's fine. But it's like there's a reason there's masculine energy. There's a reason there's feminine energy. And I think
Yeah.
our generation of women has had to kind of play both fields. And I feel like that's not necessarily healthy, that like we've come to
Mhm.
this point where we have to be this masculine energy. Like, no, like that's not to me, that's my opinion. I don't feel that women were meant to be these masculine things, but we
Mhm.
have a lot of feminine men now where
Yeah, girl.
they're in their feminine energy. So it's just like, okay, well, if you can't be masculine, I'm gonna have to be that. And I think for me, I just had to take that time to be like, okay, I gotta rest. I have to make sure me
Mhm.
and my baby are okay. And okay, I gave birth. Now she's here. I gotta just make sure I can be good and let me figure out my health and let me make sure my baby's okay before I'm worried about making content. So
Oh,
it's definitely been a transitional period because I feel like now she just turned 2, so now it's like, "Okay, like, what you trying to do now, girl?" You know? But
yeah,
in that
girl.
moment, it was more so just like, "No, I don't care that I'm not on these platforms," because at that point, like you said, the algorithm had already started changing the year before, so I had already got to a point where it's like, "I'm not about to stress myself
Play these
over
games.
y'all." Yeah, like I'm
Play these
not
games.
about to be trying to figure out why I have followers, but my followers say they never see my stuff. Like at this point,
Yeah.
like, what do you want from me? You want me to give you the same work capacity, but with less viewership? That just doesn't even make any sense. So I had to just kind of step back and say, okay, in this chapter of my life, God wants me to focus on other things. And if and when social media comes back for me to be a part of that, then that'll be. But if not, then God has something else for me. So, yeah.
I do want to touch on something that you said because it's
Mhm.
so important and I want to co-sign. I too do not believe that feminine people should be forced to play the role of masculine when that is not what we were meant to be. I
Mhm.
think that yeah, honestly, and then you brought up feminine men. And I do want to take a moment because earlier you were speaking about how thinking you have to be married is a misconception and that can really kill your joy in early stages of motherhood. And I would completely agree with that because what you don't want to do is end up married to somebody who is not dedicated to evolution. And that's a whole different
Mhm.
subject. But what I did want to say to anyone who may be listening, you might have a little and you might be trying to figure out, like, you might have a partner or you might have someone that you were really trying to work it out with, a spiritual marriage, if you will, living together or just around each other, trying to figure it out. One of two things are going to happen. The first, most common, is it's too hard, too much trauma comes up, and the people separate.
Mhm.
The latter, which is so beautiful, is when you are more feminine and you recognize you're being forced to be in your masculine. You
Mhm.
notice it. You notice your partner is more in his feminine than his masculine. You bring it to his attention, and there is a leveling out of the energies. And it's not comfortable. It does not feel good at all. It's a lot of long conversations and a lot of journaling and a lot of therapy if you're open to it. It's a lot of stuff, but it's possible to have a leveling out to where, as women, we can return to an energetic space that is more sustainable. If
Mhm.
my husband and I did not figure that out, I I don't know. I can't even tell you what this home life would have been like. But in order to be the parents that we wanted to be, we had to figure out that energy between us, because I
Mhm.
was very in my masculine, and I think it contributed a lot to my postpartum. Being
Yeah.
in my masculine and being like, I have to make this content on YouTube. I have to have 3 videos a week. I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And now 3 years later, I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna make a podcast and upload it when I
Yeah.
feel like it and
Yeah. I love that for you.
go with the flow.
I love
You know?
Mhm.
Thank you,
I
sis.
love that for
Thank
you. I really do. Yeah. That is definitely the hardest part, especially when you don't necessarily have your situation in the beautiful way that you thought you would, trying to
you.
balance out not being too masculine, but not like, I don't want to say not being feminine because I want to be feminine all the time, but at the same
Yeah,
time,
yeah, yeah.
knowing that like in this chapter, need some form of masculine energy in order to, level up to the next level because
Yeah.
I was
It's
fortunate.
a mixture.
Yeah, definitely. There has to be a
Yeah.
balance, but I think, we've been
Yes. That's a
imbalanced
good
for
word.
so long, and I think that's what it is. We have to have a balance of masculine and
Mm,
feminine energy.
yes, yes. Because everyone's chemistry is different.
Right.
Absolutely. Talking like a
Right.
science Barbie. Okay. Let me see what my last question is. Okay. My last question is, what advice do you want to give to any new moms who may be listening?
Well, my first bit of advice would be do not compare your life to other people because what you may
Ooh.
see may not actually be the real reality. And I think, people try to put women down who are single moms or people who may not be in the
Mm-hmm.
best situation as far as with the child's father. However, you don't know people's stories and you don't know what it is that the mom is trying to keep from their children or to
Mm-hmm.
lessen the traumas of their child. So it's like
Protect them.
yeah,
Protect them.
to protect them. So it's like my advice would be just honestly don't compare yourself because you actually don't know what anybody is going through. Somebody could look like they're
Yeah.
living the best dream on social media with their husband, with their children, with everything, but you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. So comparison is a thief of joy. And I know we talked about that
Yes.
earlier, but it really is because everybody's journey is meant to be different. If we all had the same life, then life would be very boring and we would learn nothing from this life. So I think you just have to really
Mm.
just go with the flow and trust the process and know that as long as you're doing good and putting good into the world, you're exactly where you need to be thankful that you have a baby that's healthy, that loves you, that came into this world and that you're actually able to spend time with because I think we also kind of take that for granted. I think becoming a mom taught me like the little things matter, like
Yeah.
my grandmother's mother died during birth. Um, so my grandma grew up without a mom. And then when I was
Oh,
sick, I ended up in the ICU. That's a whole nother story when I was giving birth. But they do black women wrong in the hospitals. So I ended
a
up in
whole
the
nother
ICU.
conversation we could have.
Right. And I just
Mhm.
remember, like, when I couldn't speak, like, I was just like, the tears were just pouring out my eyes, and all I could think is, like, I don't wanna die, I just wanna be here for my baby. So, just be thankful that you even got to the point where you could look at your child because there are some women who literally don't even make it past that point. So, yeah.
Look, gratitude, real gratitude. I think that it's different for everyone. I'm not trying to tell y'all how to have a gratitude practice, but
Yeah.
sometimes for me, I make a gratitude list every morning. So sometimes for me, I'm making my little list and I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. And sometimes it takes having to go back to some of the scariest moments in my life
Mm.
and seeing how far I've come to be like,
Mhm.
oh, I am thankful. I am
Mhm.
grateful. And when it comes to our babies, you guys do not, like Linda said, when your baby takes their first step, that is a birthday party when, or not a birthday, but that's a party. When your child holds their head up on their own for the first time, that is a reason to celebrate. I was conflicted as to whether I was going to share this story, but I think it's just relevant. So I will share it. it was just one of those moments when you're hanging out with a new person and you're like, am I going to be friends with this person? And I had a 1-year-old and she also had a 1-year-old, and her 1 year, I was talking to her and I was like, what did you do when he started walking? And she just looked at me and she was like, what do you mean? He's supposed to do that. And
Mm,
and in that moment, I was like, okay, I don't think that me and this person's personalities are in alignment, but it hurt my heart for her son because I don't have any, you're supposed to do that. I don't have any of those. Everything, every bit, every milestone that my child comes into, I am so extremely grateful for them, especially having a child in school. AJ is a very good student. Some things he does struggle with and some things he does excel in. And I think that the things that he struggles in, I'm not worried about it. And I do see what, like, parent teacher conferences and speaking with teachers, they'll be trying to reassure me like, oh, this is normal. He'll be fine. He'll be caught up by this time. And I'm like, yeah, I know he will. He's going to be great. And
mm,
I think that goes back to like that aspect of control,
mhm,
letting go of the control that your child is supposed to be a certain way, is supposed to show up a certain way, and more so being grateful for who they are so far. Because if
mhm,
your child is breathing on their own, like, please recognize how big of a blessing that is.
mhm. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. No, that's
Don't take it for
facts.
granted.
That is
Don't take
facts.
it for granted.
Everything that they do is such a blessing. And
Yes.
it's easy to get lost in the sauce and actually
Yeah.
take them for granted. So you got to look at all the little things as wins as well. It's not just the big things that like everybody's rah-rahing for. It's the small things.
Yeah.
Like even
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
getting home safely with your child. That is amazing. Like, so
Yes.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I
Mm,
think that when the misbehaving starts and the talking back starts, it's really
mm.
those moments
Yeah.
where we want to cling on to the, well, at least they speak up for themselves. At least,
Yeah.
at
Ooh,
least that
yeah.
cognitive intelligence is coming in,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
AJ is starting to be a man of his own.
Yeah.
And I do not want to, we're getting to the end of this podcast, you guys, so I'm not going to start a whole nother topic. But I think I read something a few years ago about how a lot of times single mothers with sons will try to make their sons more feminine just to make them easier to control and to handle, which I completely get, because little boys are a lot, like physically they're a lot. So at times, like, AJ starting to talk with a little bass in his voice. and at and at times I will find myself ready to like try to cut that off, and I have to stop myself and say, this is who he's becoming. Definitely, like, if he says something out the way, we got to sit down and
Right,
discuss like why that's not appropriate. But
right.
as far as like just saying that behavior, I don't want to see it, I don't want to hear it, like trying to cut it out, it takes self will to be like, don't do that. Let
Mhm,
him be, let him
mhm,
grow. So I just
mhm.
hope that I'm offering a perspective to any moms who may be struggling with that.
No,
Yeah,
definitely, definitely. Oh,
I
yeah,
know.
I get
He's
it.
my little pumpkin.
I get it. I just hit the twos, the terrible twos. So I get it. So
Man, but
rock
this is
out.
when the person, I mean, Zara's always had personality. She's always had personality. But this is when the good stuff really starts. Like, she starts to articulate feeling. Oh,
Mm,
it never stops being good. It never
yeah,
stops. They never stop impressing you.
yeah. Definitely see that. I definitely see that as she's calling for me right now.
Oh, well, I won't hold you up too much longer. Linda, where can people find you if they'd like to follow you on your socials?
Of course, thank you for having me. But if you guys want to keep up with
Absolutely.
me, thank you. If you guys want to keep up with me or little Zaza, you can find me at I am Linda Elaine or the Princess Sarah.
Woo. Thank you so much, honey. Talk to you next
Thank
time.
you, Dom.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of More Peace, Please. I do hope that you enjoyed it. Want to keep up with me? Well, that's a coincidence. I want to keep up with you too, boo. Best way to stay in the know is to follow me on Substack at Brown and Bindi. You can find me under the same handle on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat. Until next time, remember to seek more peace. Please.